thank all the volunteers and their counterparts across Africa who put in such amazing effort during World Malaria Month. Science has provided us some pretty amazing tools, from rapid diagnostic tests that a community healthcare worker with just the most basic of education can use, to artemisinin combination therapies that quickly cure, to long-lasting insecticide-treated bed nets that for less than $3 can protect a child from contracting malaria in the first place. But these tools, for all their importance, aren't what's going to eliminate malaria. People will eliminate malaria. Dedicated people like yourselves. People willing to sacrifice their time and sweat and tears for the good of others. People like Elizabeth Livingston and Jess He and their peers in the Gambia, who are using soccer as a tool to get kids interested in malaria prevention. Camille Yamin in Madagascar, whose Gimme 5 program encouraged secondary school students to know 5 ways they can protect themselves from malaria. Josh Cruz and Teresa Wang in Uganda, who worked with the hip-hop dance group Dream House to produce an awareness-raising music video. If you like Uptown Funk, you're going to like this one. Here's one I love. Tally Levitz in Malawi. She used a Mrs. Mosquito big book to teach primary school-age children about malaria. But that Mrs. Mosquito book was actually written by volunteers in Uganda. So that's good ideas spreading, which we love to see. And what all these projects have in common is that they focus on youth. This is the generation that's going to eliminate malaria, but only if they're part of the effort. And volunteers are fantastic at engaging youth. But volunteers don't just work with students. In Senegal, volunteers work to engage their entire communities. In Tanzania, volunteers are working with Johns Hopkins' Pata Pata program to promote community discourse on malaria issues. And in Zambia, Chelsea Rennig worked with her local women's group to encourage them to improve their bed nets by sewing on a durable skirt at the bottom to prevent tears in the net when it's tucked in at night. Isn't that just so obvious and practical? And getting to zero is going to require just exactly that kind of deep, practical insight across the continent. And Peace Corps volunteers are leading the way. So it was really, really hard for us to choose a winner for this competition because the work was just universally of such high caliber. But as we read through the reports, a few really stood out. They were exemplary both in the work they documented and the clarity of their presentation. So honorable mention goes to Madagascar, where 49% of all volunteers engaged during World Malaria Month. But what we were really impressed by with Madagascar was just the breadth of different activities performed. They were working with youth, with mothers groups, with puppet theater, just across the board. Our third place goes to Zambia, where 66% of all volunteers engaged during World Malaria Month. They conducted over 150 health talks, painted 7 murals, and were even engaged in entomological research, which is fantastic and high value. Now, I know on some level that this is a cop-out, but we just couldn't decide between our top 2 countries. So after much hand-wringing, we decided to declare it a tie between Rwanda and Mozambique. Both had great participation, 66% in Rwanda, 62% in Mozambique. But what really set them apart was the care and strategic thought that went into their reports. Both looked incredibly professional. When I meet with potential partners, I'd be proud to put these reports into their hands and say, this is what Peace Corps can do. They also both paid attention to process and strategy. So we came away from reading both reports feeling like we had learned valuable things about what the challenges were to holding a competition like this and what worked. And lastly, both had great use of photos and highlights, not just summary statistics. We loved that Rwanda used the volunteers' own voice in there for their highlights, and that Mozambique was so thorough. They celebrated contributions from each region of the country. Both these reports, they felt less like a summary and more like a personable and encouraging pat on the back to all the volunteers in the country who participated. So, honorable mention, Madagascar. Third place, Zambia. And tied for first, Rwanda and Mozambique. Thank you, everyone that participated, and all of your incredible and inspiring counterparts. What you're working towards is a really historic goal and also a noble one. So thank you so much for your sacrifice and your work. Keep stomping.